All right, good afternoon, everybody. Want to welcome you to the October 3rd Lunchtime Hot Topics. This is Brad Neuenswander. We have several important updates to provide to you today. First of all, Beth Fultz is going to provide you an update on ACT and WorkKeys. Most of you are aware by now the legislature. We appreciate them providing funding for all public school students to take for free, not required, but for free, ACT and or WorkKeys. And starting this spring, and Beth is going to provide you a good update on that. Next, Cary Rogers. She's going to give you an update on under ESSA, the 1% justification, which basically is the students with disabilities that only up to 1% are exempt from the assessment. So Cary will give you an update on that. Mischell Miller will provide an update on Kisa, and Perryman is going to provide you an update on excuse me, English language arts and resources that we have for that. I just want to remind everybody, it's coming up quick, the October 15th and 17th annual conference in Wichita at the Hyatt Regency. The first day of the pre-conference is all about school redesign. So we encourage you, your district, you want to learn more about our Kansans Can Redesign Initiative. There'll be a lot of good information there. There will be Mercury districts sharing their models in several breakout sessions. So we're excited about that. Then, of course, the main conference is on the 16th and 17th. I also want to put this on your calendar as a reminder. To save the date for the Teacher Retention Summit will be held again at Kansas State University. And the main goal of this is how do we do a better job of recruiting and retaining teachers. So that is November 19th at the K-State Alumni Center. Again, I want to remind everybody, if you have comments, suggestions for topics, questions, send those to lunchtime@ksde.org, and that informs us on maybe what we can do to better improve this, and including topics that you want to hear about in the future. So we appreciate your partnership in this, and we will get on with the program.
Hello, my name is Beth Fultz, and I'm an Assistant Director on the Career Standards and Assessment Services team. Today I'd like to talk to you about ACT and WorkKeys. As I've shared previously, and I'm sure you've heard through all of our listserv messages from the Commissioner, the Deputy Commissioners, the Legislature approved funds to administer both ACT and WorkKeys this academic year. The funding was for public schools only. It's for all juniors. The number one question that we're getting at the agency right now is, what if juniors take the test in the fall? Can they retake the test in the spring and the state will pay for it? The answer is yes. Any junior is eligible to take the ACT and WorkKeys, and any senior who's not had the opportunity to take the test may take the assessment. So if a senior has already taken the test once, this program isn't for the seniors. It is for all juniors, and then any senior who hasn't had that opportunity. The idea of the program is that all students have the opportunity to take ACT and WorkKeys, and we're asking districts or buildings or teachers not to be the gatekeeper for students. If a student wants to take the assessment, the funds are there, and they should be allowed to take the assessment. So that seems to be the biggest issue, and all the comments and everything that come in right now, and the confusion is that it's for all juniors, whether they've taken the test or not. Whether you think they're ready to take the test or not, if a junior wants to take the ACT and or WorkKeys, they can, and we would encourage students to take both assessments, and then any senior who's not had that opportunity to test. So the statewide testing dates. If your building is giving the ACT on some date other than Wednesday, February 20th for the ACT or Thursday, February 21st for WorkKeys, KSDE will not be picking up the bill. If you want KSDE to pay for the students to take ACT and WorkKeys, then the test dates will be February 20th and February 21st. There's a window for WorkKeys. If you do it online, we would encourage you to do WorkKeys online. And there's a makeup test date of April 2nd for ACT. ACT will be at the KSDE annual conference. They have a session scheduled on October 16th. It's called College and Career for All. If you weren't able to make one of the trainings on October 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, I would highly encourage you attend the annual conference and go to their session on October 16th. ACT will also have a booth in our at the annual conference, and they will be there, and it will be staffed, and they will be able to answer your questions. So, like I say, if you weren't able to make the trainings on October 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, I would encourage you to get to the conference on October 16th and or stop by their booth. So what's new this month with ACT? Managed participation becomes available November 5th. Test coordinators are required to go to the ACT website and manage participation and let ACT know that you will indeed be giving the assessment on February 20th and 21st. There's a video that will provide more specific instructions for you. KSDE, this is different than state assessments. KSDE is not the middleman. We don't have a direct hotline to ACT to get your questions answered. The most efficient way to get your questions answered if you have ACT questions is go directly to ACT. That's the way the contract is written. That's their preference. Lee and I will not be, and Kent will not be able to be that middle person for you. You need to watch the deadlines, follow the ACT requirements, and go to ACT with your questions. In order for KSDE to pay for all these assessments, you are required to submit a TEST record in kids. You can do that now. So submit TEST records through kids to KSDE. KSDE will provide the names to ACT when you go in to manage participation. If you've submitted test records, you should be able to see the list of students that you've said would like to take the test. Accommodations. This is different than what we do for state assessments. ACT has their own accommodations. To have a student receive accommodations on ACT, ACT must approve it. They have a system that's called Test Administration and Accessibility, TAA, that will open Monday, November 5th. Any students that need extra time or accommodations that ACT allows, then you need to go into the system, upload the necessary documentation, and get their approval. All accommodations must be approved by ACT by January the 11th. So those are important dates for you to remember. So to get into the portal on November 5th, indicate that you would like to give the assessment, and then make sure your test records have been submitted to KSDE so KSDE can send those names to ACT and populate the list of students that will be testing in your building. If you have other questions, you can send Lee or I an email, but again, I would really recommend that you go straight to ACT because you're going to get a better answer, and it will be more timely than if you have to work through some middle person, which would be Lee or I at KSDE. So I hope you're excited about administering ACT. We're real excited. We hope that all the students have an opportunity to take the test, and I will be back next month with some additional information as it becomes available. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Cary Rogers. I'm an education program consultant with the Special Education and Title Services team, and I'm going to give you some updates on the 1% justifications. First of all, we appreciate your assistance in completing the 1% justification forms that were sent to districts last spring for those districts that tested over 1% of their students on the DLM. We have been busy reviewing the justification forms and analyzing the data available on Educator Portal through the year-end results. It is important that teams don't assume a student automatically takes the DLM every year. Teams should be using their year-end results from this past year and previous years when deciding which assessment a student should take. To assist teams in doing this, DLM teachers now have access on Educator Portal to the past 4 years' year-end reports for those students who are currently rostered to them. If a student is performing at target or advanced in both English language arts and math, teams need to be having a conversation on whether the student should be transitioned to the general assessment with accommodations in order to be adequately challenged. Teams need to be using the Dynamic Learning Maps participation guidelines, which have been updated to include a second page with clarification on what a significant cognitive disability is. It is important to remember these students also have significant deficits in adaptive behavior. When making decisions on which students qualify for the Dynamic Learning Maps assessment, it is important to consider the continuum of need and refer to the participation guidelines. One student with an intellectual disability may take a general assessment with accommodations, while another student may qualify for the Dynamic Learning Maps assessment. If you receive a justification form for the 2017-18 school year, please review this new information and use it to complete the 1% justification form. These will be going out in November. Administrators should access the school aggregate bundled report for your districts. If you need further assistance, please contact me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mischell Miller. I'm the Director of Teacher Licensure and Accreditation with the State Department, and I just want to bring you a couple of the latest Kisa updates. These are the contact information for any time you have a question on any of these topics. And then we have also provided you at the bottom of this screen the accreditation email address that if you just have general questions and you're looking to have answered, this is an excellent way to reach us. So some of the things for systems to be thinking about in the 18-19 school year, all systems need to be planning the date for their annual on-site visit. Remember, that's a requirement of each year of the Kisa school improvement process. So it's time to get those settled for spring because we know that's a very busy time. Also making sure you're contacting your on-site visiting team and chair and determining the date, the members as well as the chair. And you need to go into the Kisa application and complete system yearly updates. It's important to remember that this visit belongs to the system, and it is your responsibility to verify these dates and make these appointments with your chair and your team members. I wanted to take a minute to take you to this website where we have updated and included some new information that will be helpful to you. If you are a system who is in year 1, you see the 5 kinds of documents that would be important for you to take a look at. For example, the yearly system update. What we have done is put these on as PDFs and ask that you take a look at these. These are what you will see when we open up the authenticated app. And at the bottom of this page, it's very important for you to see the words that say, tell your story. Whatever your story may be sure that you are telling it through your accreditation process. And we put these reminders in red specifically to remind you that the system does time itself out after a certain time. So save often, If you're nervous about that, please type your answers in a Word document, and that will be most helpful. The other piece that I want to point out to you is if you are a system in year 2, year 3, 4, or 5, your updates are here as well. And if you have questions or concerns about that, please take time to go and visit this website. On the other side, the on-site visiting team chair is responsible for as well making contact with the system to solidify the date for the annual visit. It's also their responsibility to review the yearly update for the system and to collaborate with other members of the team to complete their chair annual summary at the end of each system's visit. Systems accredited last year in the 2017-2018 school year are ready to begin their year 1. So they'll start with their initial report, complete the system yearly update year 1. The systems that are in year 5 and being accredited this year in the spring of 19 and presented to the board need to be sure that they complete the final report, system yearly update year 5. Systems in 2, 3, and 4, you have an update report to fill out as well for your respective year as reflected on the website I took you to earlier. Some changes in Kisa. The yearly updates, those are not new. We have revised some of our OVT workbook pages and tried our best to align those all for the system completion, that they align in the workbook to what's on the authenticated app, to what the board will see when they are ready to make their accreditation recommendation. We've tried to align those as closely as possible. The chair annual summary is only to be reported and that's the only report completed by the OVT chair, but it is to be completed in collaboration with the members. I encouraged chairs last spring to allow 30 minutes in the agenda at the end of the day to collaborate with the other members and complete that report together so that you don't have to take that work out of the district and try to gather information once you have left your system. Generally, we have a system feedback survey available at this SurveyMonkey link. It would be helpful if systems districts could go in and take a look at that and give us some feedback information. It's also important that each system has completed their initial report. We still have systems that have not completed this report for this year on their initial report from last year. That means that that system is not included in the data being presented to Dr. Watson and the state board. If those reports aren't completed, your system is not in the data being reported to Dr. Watson and the state board. Systems need to continue to work with chairs to ensure that the annual summary report is complete and reflects the decisions and discussions from last year. We have some chairs who have not yet completed those reports as well, so that means that system does not have an annual chair summary report complete. Those are things that must be done on a yearly basis. We will continue as we did last year with our technical assistance and support phone calls. This information is provided to you for OVTs and chairs. These are specific calls related to technical assistance for, as I said, chairs and systems from October 16th to March 19th, the third Tuesday, and the number, time, and conference call code are there for your availability. So we also want to provide technical assistance to our systems in year 5 and also their chairs, and we've created Zoom meetings for those, and those dates and links are listed there as well. It became important for us to realize that we needed to get out to the regions and give some support face-to-face. So we've created several dates that we can be out with our service centers for a half a day to just bring some regional support, questions and answers, and be in the area to provide support to systems in those regions, as I said, on a face-to-face basis. So here are those dates, locations, and times, and registration links are provided as well. We know that we need to do a more intentional chair and outside visitation team training. And so our intention is to roll those out in late fall, sometime in November. And this year we will be doing, as I said, more intentional support on what to do prior to the visit, during the visit, and after the on-site visit. A little bit more logistical information for our OVT chairs, and we will be doing those in collaboration with the Service Center and trying to do our best to keep that connection with the Kelly Leadership Institute as well, with Kelly. Reminder about the ARC. The Accreditation Review Council had their first meeting last week in September, and we meet again in November. And this group is charged with the recommendation for accreditation status of systems to the state board, and they meet every other month for a full day to discuss their bylaws, their reports and expectations, and how we can more fully refine the accreditation criteria for the board. Along with the Accreditation Review Council, we also have an Accreditation Advisory Council. This group provides support and advice to KSDE staff. They meet 5 times throughout the year. They met in September as well, and their focus is the update and application changes and alignment right now with the Kisa rubrics and the 4 school redesign principles. That is a huge task for them this year, and we hope to have some things finalized to be able to present to the board in next summer, early fall. And their next meeting is November 5th. With that being said, I would leave you again with this little bit of contact information, but I would direct your attention back to the first slide that lists myself and the staff. And if at any point you have questions or concerns, would like one of us or a team of us to come into your system and chat with you about your process, we are more than happy to do so.
Hi, and welcome to the October edition of Hot Topics. My name is Sarah Perryman, and I'm going to provide you with some updates in the world of English language arts. I'd like to begin by directing you to some new documents and resources available on the English Language Arts KSDE page. I started sending out a monthly newsletter this summer, and I've been pleased with how that has allowed me to get information to teachers across the state. In order to keep an online log of those updates, I've created a new page under the Home tab. To see any month's newsletter, simply hover over the Home button, and you'll see a link for the monthly newsletter page. Over the summer, Math published a very helpful resource guide that walks school leaders through the process of adopting a new curricular resource. I revised that document to give it an ELA foundation and posted that to the site for your use. If you have questions over evaluating a resource or how to best redesign your curriculum app, please reach out to me and I'd be happy to assist you in that endeavor. In order to have me come work or present in your district, you must simply fill out the request form on the professional learning page. If I'm available, I will make every effort to come to your school or district. If I'm not available, I'm happy to work out an arrangement with you. One thing I've started doing is uploading presentations I have or that I'm giving to teachers across the state. These PowerPoints are from my online courses and from the various events I've presented at for English Language Arts. If ever there is a topic you'd like to have more information on, please let me know and I will work to make that available to you. Those PowerPoints can be accessed by going to the 2018-2019 Professional Learning Opportunities page under the PD tab. The last document I'd like to draw your attention to is the Kansas Guide to Learning Literacy. When thinking about best practice for classroom instruction, educators must consider more than just what and how they are teaching. They must consider the environment of the classroom, the learning objectives, how they will assess student learning, and what standards they are targeting. This literacy guide walks teachers through those various considerations and their impact on ELA instruction across the domains of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. If you've not invested time in it, If you've not invested time in exploring this resource, I would encourage you to do so, as it will positively influence the instruction that occurs in your classroom. As part of our state ESSA plan, we're working to provide teachers with more resources regarding best practice and quality instruction. On the right, you will see some general practices that, implemented by teachers, are considered to be best practice. As teachers, we should be ensuring that our curriculum is aligned, rigorous, and taught in a manner that best meets the needs of every student. Over the course of this school year, I will host online learning courses that focus on the topics you see on the left. In order to support teachers in promoting best practice in their classrooms, I've chosen to focus on topics like standards-based grading, the use of formative assessments, and implementing literacy strategies across the curriculum. I'd like to invite you to explore these topics with me further through my online platform. To learn more about signing up for those courses, please review my monthly newsletter. If at any time you'd like to be added to my email list to receive that newsletter directly and any other update, simply email that request to me at sperryman@ksde.org. Then lastly, over the last month, I encouraged teachers across the state to apply to be item writers for our 2020 state ELA assessment. We needed approximately 21 people, and we received an astounding 74 applicants. I was so encouraged to see so many of our educators applying for this professional opportunity. For those not selected, or for those who missed out on applying this time, do not worry. There's still a chance for you to be involved in the test creation process. As we move into the spring semester, we will begin the process of reviewing more passages for future exams. If you're interested in reviewing these passages, please let me know, and I can add you to our list of interested practitioners. Additionally, KU is hosting trainings for test coordinators regarding the state assessment and the addition of the ACT WorkKeys exam. If you'd like more concrete information about these workshops, please visit your Service Center websites or email me your questions. In order to support teachers, I will also partner with the ELA Assessment Coordinator at KU, Natalie Nordby-Chen, to focus my November PD on assessments and everything you might need to know regarding classroom, district, and statewide tests. In the meantime, if you'd like to learn more about our state assessment, please visit www.ksassessments.org. Thank you for all of the work you do to support our students and their growth toward higher levels of literacy. Again, if I can ever be of support to you, your school, or your district, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thanks.
Over the next few minutes, we're going to talk about our title services and our non-public schools. Because one of the keys as we enter the second full month of school is we want to make sure that our school districts and our non-public schools continue their timely and meaningful consultation throughout the school year. At this point, title services to students should be well underway, as they should have started at the same time as our public schools start to receive their title services. And professional development planning for the school year, if it hasn't been completed, there have been some discussions and completion is coming up soon. Just as a reminder, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, also known as ESEA, was reauthorized under ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, and it does require our LEAs to provide for equitable participation of private school students, teachers, and in some cases parents and other educational personnel in many of the ESEA's major programs. And that's what we're going to provide, just some general reminders of what programs those are and how we should be providing these services. We always want to remind our school districts and non-public schools that the public school district is the fiscal agent and should retain all the funding. There should never be money being sent from the public school to the private school. The public school should pay and employ any teachers or staff paid with federal funds that are helping with services in the private school, and all professional development provided to staff in private schools or in our non-public schools should be paid for directly from the public school district. So what are the equitable services provisions we're talking about? Title I, Part A, which generally we hear of as just called Title I, falls under Section 1117, which is part of Title I of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Titles 2 through 8 of ESEA, the private school or non-public information, is found in sections 8501 through 8504. This section of the law is also considered the uniform provisions. So what is covered under Title 8? These are our other major programs, such as Title I, Part C, our migrant program, Title II, Part A, our preparing, training, and recruiting program. This is where we find most of the professional development funding, which used to be considered to increase our highly qualified, but it has been expanded to provide more professional development also to our principals and leaders in other areas such as librarians, counselors, and some of our very important areas that may not be considered core content. Then we have Title III, Part A, our English Learners Program, Title IV, Part A, which is one of our newer programs, the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grants. And then for those districts who have the competitive Title IV, Part B, 21st Century Community Learning Centers, they should also be consulting over those programs. So what is the equitable services requirement? One of the keys is timely and meaningful consultation should be occurring with our private school officials. We also talk about that this should be ongoing. It shouldn't just be a meeting in the spring to plan for the next year. We should have our meeting in the spring planning for the following year, and then near the start of the school year making any adjustments or updates based on services that will be able to be provided, based on the amount of funding that will be geared to provide those services to the non-public schools. We need to give every opportunity for our private school counterparts to participate in equivalent opportunities that public school students and teachers get. We also, throughout the year, need to be assessing, addressing, and evaluating the needs of the private school students and teachers, and evaluating if our programs are working with the students that we're providing them to. The key is that these benefits and services meet the needs of the private school students and teachers, and the amount which KSDE, through the allocations process for Titles 2, 3, and 4, provide to our public schools, and through the local consolidated plan, our amount for Title I are provided. These numbers need to be shared with our counterparts in the private schools so they have an idea. Probably the two biggest keys for consultation are ongoing communication. So even though we've started the year, we've got a plan, we need to be touching base throughout the school year because we know sometimes things change. The key is we need to have that ongoing, whether it's by phone, in person, through email, depends on what is working and the importance level. We also encourage both our private school counterparts to come to our public schools and our public school counterparts to visit the private schools physically in their communities, so we're familiar with each other's programs. Along with that communication, it's that building of relationships, because we want everything to run smooth, and it's great when it does, but sometimes things happen. Maybe we'd planned some professional development and the teacher or teachers we were planning on sending something does not work out. We want to make sure we have those relationships built, so when we do have bumps in the road, we can work through them as professionals and make sure that the services that need to be provided to the students and teachers continue on. Our last slide for today is just kind of the general showing of what happens during consultation. We have a lot of topics. The ones in blue have been topics that we've had since 2002 that should have been occurring during our consultation process. Many of those we don't speak a whole lot about because there's not interest between the non-public and the public schools to provide it, services in certain ways. But then with the Every Student Succeeds Act being passed in 2005, we've got a few more that we are required to talk about, with one of the keys being that bottom one in red that requires written affirmation. So we have on our consultation forms, which are available on the KSDE website, which you can go to under the subject index at ksd.org under N for non-public schools. And we have our consultation document along with other resources that are available. Not only do our non-public school counterparts need to sign off on the form and what programs they're accepting services in, but also we have an affirmation where we're requiring a signature from the private school official that timely and meaningful consultation did occur. So once again, that signature is to show from the non-public official that timely and meaningful consultation occurred. If you have any questions, feel free to check our website at ksd.org, or you may email or call me, Tate Toedman, at 785-296-6714 or ttateman at ksd.org. Thank you for all you do for the kids in Kansas, and keep up the great work. For the next few minutes, we're going to talk about Title IV Part A, the new Student Support and Academic Enrichment Grants. I'm Tate Toedman, the Assistant Director on the Special Education Title Services team. 2018-19 school year is the second year that districts have access to Title IV Part A funds. Many districts, however, had to transfer, REAP, or join a consortium in the previous school year. So this will be the first year for many of our districts to be using the Title IV Part A funds at their district level. We want to point out we do have some resources available on our KSD website that go along with this program. We have a link to the KSD Title IV Part A website. The easiest way to find that is to go to ksd.org, and under the subject index in T, click on T, and you'll look for Title IV Part A. Part A is this new program. Part B would be our 21st Century Community Learning Centers, which is a competitive out-of-school grant. And then right now we have two very valuable resources among the resources on the web page. The first is just a basic fact sheet that talks about the basic rules and some of the activities that districts may use these funds on. And then the next document is non-regulatory guidance, which is a guidance document from the United States Department of Ed, which again also provides some really good information for districts to consider when looking at how they are going to use these dollars to enhance their programs. A key reminder about Title IV Part A, as it falls under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, that it does have a supplement, not supplant rule that goes with it. That means districts and schools using these funds must be using these funds above and beyond what they've already been providing. So some of the questions we've got: may we pay our counselor with these funds? May we pay our physical education teacher, our music teacher, etc. with these funds? The answer would be no if these people are currently employed. Now, for districts that may be without a counselor, you could use these funds to help hire a counselor. Or if you have 3 counselors in a building or 3 social workers and you want to hire a new one or pay for part of a new one, these funds would be allowed. We strongly encourage, whether districts are required to, based on the law of receiving $30,000 or more in this fund, to use their needs assessment for the district, whether it's through Kisa, Industar, whatever strategic planning and needs assessment a district uses. They want to be looking at that to help determine what are the needs and how can these funds have the biggest effect in their district. This is a really good chart that we came across earlier this year in a training that we like to point out some of the rules. For districts receiving $30,000 or more, we'll be looking at the left-hand column. There are requirements under each of the sections of Title IV Part A. If a district receives $30,000, they must do a needs assessment and spend these funds at a minimum under well-rounded education of 20%. A district could spend more than 20% in well-rounded education, but that is a minimum. The same thing with safe schools. The 20% is a minimum amount. And then you see in the third part of that first chart, 60% may go to well-rounded education, safe schools, or technology. And that 60% needs to be divided up between the three of those. It could be 60% completely for technology, it could be 10% technology, and the other 50% of the remaining broken up between well-rounded education and safe schools. This page also gives a very general overview of some of the things. And one of the things we want to remind people, these are to create new or enhance current programs already in our schools. So well-rounded education, just some general things that go into that are our STEAM programs, our music, our art, our physical education. Under our safe schools, some of the general things are having healthy students, violence prevention, school counselors, and key is what our school counselors will be doing and above and beyond what they're currently doing. And there's also a big focus on mental health under the safe schools section. And then technology, it's materials, professional development. We can look at equipment and devices, digital content. The key is no matter what, whether a district falls above or below 30%, whatever they spend in the technology area, it could be that full 60%, it could be 5%, only 15% of that amount going to technology can be for infrastructure. So we don't see many of our districts getting money where this is going to be a very viable option with that 15% cap on infrastructure. Because as a reminder, that is not a 15% cap of the whole Title IV Part A. That is the 15% cap of the amount the district is using on technology. And for those under 30,000, you still have the technology rule if you spend money on the technology. But districts that did not receive an allocation of 30,000 or more may choose in any of these areas how much they spend. They could spread the money out between the three areas. They could focus the entire grant on well-rounded education or safe schools or technology. Again, whatever percentage is on technology for districts under 30,000, they also have that 15% cap on infrastructure for that amount. And if you look at the fact sheet or go on to the guidance document provided by the United States Department of Education, it will detail those three areas we just talked about in a lot more detail. Activities to support well-rounded education fall under Section 4107 of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Activities to support safe and healthy schools is Section 4108. And activities to support the effective use of technology is Section 4109. Please feel free to contact me or anybody else on our Special Education Title Services team as you have questions regarding Title IV Part A. Also, please use our website. And as districts are filling out their local consolidated plan on how they want to spend the money, we have plenty of the information on authorized activities listed on the local consolidated plan, as well as a little more detailed information on the help pages. Thank you for all you do for the kids in the state of Kansas. Thank you for joining us for our overview of the evidence-based practices for at-risk services. I'm Toedman, Assistant Director at the Kansas State Department of Education, and I serve on the Special Education and Title Services team. We want to make sure that everyone is aware of our new evidence-based practices website. The easiest way to find that is to go to ksd.org, and under E in the subject index, you'll find evidence-based practices. And on this website, it's divided up currently into 4 sections, describing the purpose, which we'll talk about today, some legal resources, general resources, and then links to best practices in different categorical areas. So what does evidence-based mean and why is it important? Evidence-based is any concept or strategy that is derived from or informed by objective evidence that demonstrates a statistically significant effect, most commonly educational research or metrics of school, teacher, and student performance. So the reason we have this website and the purpose of it is this website's to assist our school districts in meeting requirements under both federal and state law. When the Elementary and Secondary Education Act was passed most recently in 2015 as the Every Student Succeeds Act, all federal funds under this act are supposed to be evidence-based practices. So we need to make sure our federal funding is being used with evidence-based practices. But also our local Kansas State legislature passed KSA 72-5153, which went into effect this past July. It requires that the state board shall identify and approve evidence-based practices for at-risk programs and instruction of students receiving at-risk program services. The state board shall review and update such best practices as part of its 5-year accreditation system review process. This website will be continually updated throughout the school year and ongoing to reflect many of the best practices that are available for state use by our schools for their at-risk programs. So a lot of times people ask, what are the different levels of for these at-risk programs? And in the federal guidance provided for the Every Student Succeeds Act, the Department of Education divided it up into strong evidence, moderate evidence, and promising evidence. And then it also has a category that talks about demonstrating a rationale based on high-quality research findings or positive evaluation, but also includes ongoing efforts to examine the effects of such activities, strategies, or interventions. So there is a lot of ways and a lot of different levels of evidence. The key is we want to make sure that our school districts are using practices in their schools with students under federal funding and state at-risk funding that do have an evidence base to them. To help districts with that, in the general resources section, we have a handful of different websites that are available outside of KSDE that shows a lot of the different evidence for programs. We have the What Works Clearinghouse, the Florida Center for Reading Research, our TASN website, the Kansas Technical Assistance System Network, and our Kansas Star Industar, which many of our districts use through the Kansas Learning Network for their school-wide programs, and also many of our districts are using that for their Kisa plans. So we want to make sure that people understand that all of these have good evidence-based practices within them, and they are all, any of the practices listed in these areas that qualify as evidence-based would be allowable in these programs. Below that, we have a best practices section, and we will be updating with more general resource section, but this is the area you'll see most updated. Currently on the screen, what you'll see are the different categories we currently have listed: civic engagement, early learning, math, science, social emotional development, social studies, reading and literacy, and trauma-informed care. And as you go to the website, you'll increasingly see more list of evidence-based websites and evidence-based practices listed under each of these categories. So we want to make sure that our programs are supported throughout the state and that our programs are using these evidence-based practices. So we've been getting many questions of how this will be monitored by the state. We're still working on some of the areas, but a couple areas we can talk about where this will be monitored is through the kiosk process, through the fiscal file review, and the program assessment. The fiscal file review typically happens in the fall. The actual program assessment is in the spring. This is where the Special Education Title Services team has divided up our school districts, interlocals, and co-ops into 3 cohorts. So depending on which cohort you're in will determine the year we might be asking for this information. Currently for the 2018-19 school year, we are monitoring cohort 1. And then through the local consolidated plan, we have 2 areas that will also be collecting information on this. The first is the local consolidated plan application. which through this districts are already assuring that they're doing these things as they accept their federal funds. So that's where the assurances are and some information. And then in the local consolidated plan annual report, this is where we'll collect the data on the state at-risk programs. At this point, we are working on other ways to collect this data so we can tie our evidence-based practices to our funding sources to make sure we're accomplishing what we need to for our state legislature. As you have questions or comments, please feel free to go to our website and check these out. You can contact myself, Tate Toedman, at 785-296-6714 or ttoedman@ksd.org. You can also email to essaquestions@ksd.org if you have general questions about our evidence-based practices. Thank you for everything you're doing for the students in Kansas, and keep up the great work.